Welcome back. As you know, my name is Casey Tonnelly of Beyond Thinking, a anti-racist coaching and facilitation practice, and I have the privilege of co-presenting once again with Karimah Edwards. Karimah, will you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi and welcome everyone. I'm Karimah Edwards. I'm with Hummingbird Community Cooperation, where I'm the owner and the principal. And my firm is focused on community building and capacity building for small businesses and community organizations. And I'm so happy to be here.
Great. Thank you so much, Karimah. I'm so excited to have Karimah here with me today as we talk about the difference between calling in and calling out. In this training, we're going to talk a little bit about bias, our cultural lenses, microaggressions, and calling in and calling out, as well as accountability. I encourage you to take notes, to take pauses as you need. I look forward to sharing some more information with you.
So, as a first step, before we dive into the curriculum, let's just take a moment to pause and just reflect about your reactions to harmful behavior. When you see or hear harmful behavior towards community members that have been historically minoritized, how do you model solidarity to the minoritized gardener? Just take a moment to think about that.
I hope everybody had a chance to take a few moments for pause and reflection. A lot of times people want to know what actions they can do to combat or fight racism, and one of the most important and overlooked actions is reflection. And so recognizing that we all have responsibility, we all have a place, and it's going to be up to all of us to make a difference. So let's just be really clear and on the same page about for some of the terms that we're using that we have the same definition. When we talk about what your lens is, I think about my own glasses. And you'll actually have a handout that you can download and fill out as well with lenses on it. And it's to think about what are your identities, what's shaped you, and what are the lenses you bring. So for myself, I am white, I am queer, I am gender nonconforming, I grew up as a New Yorker, I have quirkiness in me. I currently live in Southern California, but I lived in Seattle, New York, and Charleston, South Carolina. I am a homeowner. I also have healthcare. I also have English as my native speaking language. And these things are all things that shape the lens that I bring. I'm comfortably middle-aged. So thinking about that, like those are the lenses that I bring with me, whatever I'm doing. Whether I'm having a conversation with somebody, whether I'm making a plan, whether I'm deciding what to garden or how to garden, those things are all going to shape how I do that. So when we talk about our lenses, it's important to look at what are the lenses we use to look at the world. Bias is an unreasonable, hostile feeling or opinions that are usually aimed towards a group, and that group tends to have less societal power. They might be minoritized by systems and institutions. They might be narratives about folks that are shared in the news or in TV programming or the movies that we're absorbing. We're absorbing all of that information all the time. But how does that create bias for us? And one of the things that's tricky about bias is some is conscious and explicit, and some is unconscious and implicit. And the challenge with that is I could have unconscious bias that is in absolute conflict with my conscious values. And so that's one of the things about bias that's really important, is that sometimes our behaviors, our practices, our language, we might not know that it's harmful, but it is. And when we find out, it can really be a complete contradiction of what our conscious values are. Microaggressions are terms that are used for behaviors, language, gestures, or statements or phrases that are usually geared towards somebody. It could be in a form of like thinking you're complimentary, but actually it's based off of a stereotype or it's based off of a trope. And so it actually is causing harm to folks. And the thing about microaggressions is frequently they are unintentional, but it really doesn't matter if it's intentional or unintentional. The impact is still pretty harmful for the person to experiencing it. So much so that I wonder about why we call it microaggression when it's still causing harm. We're going to cover calling in and calling out on slide 5, so wait patiently as we do that. And we're going to talk a little bit about accountability and what accountability looks like, what it means to us, and what it looks like in the context of being in community in the garden space, as well as with folks we're in relationship with or even folks we're not in relationship with. it.
As Casey mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about accountability later, but right now we wanted to talk about harms that are actually occurring in the garden. I had the privilege of being able to meet with some of the BIPOC gardeners in the BIPOC affinity space, and during this time we discussed some of the realities of what they've experienced in the garden and some of the harmful things that they've experienced. So one of the things that they mentioned is that sometimes they have felt like their presence has been policed, a feeling like they don't belong there, people approaching them and inquiring what they're doing there, and kind of a sort of surveillance that goes on. Also, there have been instances of people policing how they garden, what type of things they're planting, why are they growing that, giving them unsolicited instructions on things that they have planted in the garden, and kind of this paternal approach to their decisions that they're making in their own garden plot. Some community members have actually experienced aggression, and that has gone as far as verbal communication, that is loud yelling, what feels like verbal attack, but also destruction to their garden spaces. So this is something real that is happening, and we're going to talk a little bit later about how to make sure that you're making people accountable for their actions and things that you can do when these kind of things happen. But before we move forward, we have this video, and one of the harms that often occurs, as Casey mentioned before, is microaggressions. And if you don't know what microaggressions is, this video can give you more of an example of what a microaggression can be. I know how it's experienced by me as a Black woman. I will share this video so you can see a different take on how microaggressions can be experienced.
So you're not good at golf, but you're white.
People of color have to deal with racial microaggressions every single day. So microaggressions are those little unintentional insults that basically see people of color as stereotypes. Which got me thinking, what if white people had to deal with racial microaggressions?
So, like, where are you from?
No, like, where are you really from?
Why do you have an accent? Like a Swedish accent.
You know, your English is really, really good. It's like I can't even tell you have an accent or anything.
I don't have an accent.
No, that's what I'm saying.
You don't speak Gaelic?
You don't speak German?
Can you say a curse word in European?
You know, like, what does that even mean?
Hey Connor, you know about NASCAR stuff, right? Can you take a look at this?
Can you teach me how to line dance?
Play the banjo?
Act entitled in the supermarket.
Love white food. No real flavor to it. Never an upset tummy.
You're so exotic.
How do you get your hair like that? I love how it's so limp.
Ew, why does it feel like that? Oh my god, so it just does that?
No, you are really pretty for a white girl.
Your eyes are so round. Like this.
You know who you look like? Kenny Chesney.
Zach Braff.
Emma Stone.
Rachel Maddow.
My friend Chad. Maybe you know him, because he's white too.
No, Emma Watson.
Not Macklemore. What's the other guy?
No, is it Emma Thompson?
It's CHAD, like Chad.
One of the Emmas. You look like an Emma.
You know who you look like? I bet you hear this all the time. Jeffrey Dahmer.
How does it feel to be the token white guy in the office?
Hey, Connor, can we get a white perspective on this?
I love everything about white culture. You guys are like so fun.
What do you mean you don't listen to Creed? You're white.
You've never tried meth. But you're white.
You don't act like a normal white person.
You're not really white, though.
You're not really white.
I'm whiter than you are.
So, did all your ancestors own slaves?
No, but of course he wishes that he could still own slaves. That's a part of his culture.
Bryce, back me up on this one. The thing you have to understand about white
No,
culture
I
is
went
that
to
white
an
people are...
historically white college, so
Okay,
I know about
but I
white culture.
backpacked
Okay, it
in
was a
Europe.
mess.
So can you say how ridiculous this was? I know. Story of my life. If you've ever experienced microaggressions because of your race, gender, sexuality, or body type, go ahead and vent about it in the comments.
Can you teach me how to, like, take a really popular rap song and, like, make it a ukulele song? That's so cool. I think it's so cool how you guys do that.
So I like how they use humor to make that video, just to drive home the fact that no one likes a microaggression, to experience a microaggression, and that it is in fact harmful. But the humor is that most of those things I actually have experienced. So there's that. So what do you do when something happens? Casey and I decided it would be kind of fun to model this. What's the difference between calling in and calling out? So calling in is if you want to take them privately and circle back to a hurtful or oppressive comment, comment that they made in private. And calling out is actually interrupting whatever that, whether it's a microaggression or harmful comment that someone has made, and you let them know that it was hurtful in that space in public. So there's two differences, but we're going to start with calling in and modeling that. So Casey, can I talk to you for a second?
Yeah, absolutely, Karimah.
So earlier today when we had that staff meeting and you made a comment about we don't usually have participation in our public meetings because Black people aren't interested in participating in public meetings. That was a very harmful comment, and it's actually perpetuating something that's not true about public meetings and access to public meetings. One of the problems could be the timing or how you invite people to public meetings, but it does not have anything to do with people's interests in participating in any type of civic engagement.
Ooh, Karimah, I'm so sorry you even had to come to me and share that. I knew it in the moment that something felt funky. I knew that I had said something that was not okay. And I'm sorry that for you and for everybody in that space who had to experience that. I'm really grateful that you took the time and emotional labor to give me that feedback. That is not something I will be saying again, and I'm going to take some time to reflect on where that thought even came to me or how that thought even came to existence in my mind, because even as I say it, it's not even something I believe. So I will be doing better, and I'm going to talk to some other white folks about being accountable in this, but I also invite you without expectation to provide me feedback anytime, but I will be continuing to do some of my own work to make sure that you don't have to.
Thank you. And thank you for listening. And I believe that you will do what you can in the future to make sure this doesn't happen. That wasn't bad, right? That
No,
better.
I survived. I feel okay. But I feel like it's an investment in relationship, right? You and I are often doing work together. And the truth is, A, I don't want you as somebody I care about to experience harm. But I also don't want anybody else to experience harm because I'm not paying attention to my words or I'm not doing my own work. And I appreciate that feedback that I can receive.
So let's talk about calling out. So calling out, I'm going to use the same example. Do you want to make the comment first?
Yeah. You know, I think one of the reasons that we're just not getting a lot of participation and a lot of engagement is because a lot of Black folks and a lot of Black community members just, they don't speak up.
So Casey, I actually find that offensive. I don't think that that's the case. And I think that this is a narrative that I've been hearing a lot at work. It's not true. I think that there is an issue with providing access to my community, the Black community, to be able to engage. And I think historically, there are some things that have been huge barriers to people's engagement. So I found that very offensive.
Yeah, I hear that. I think I should maybe do some more thinking before I speak and speak about communities that I don't have the lived experience of or the relationships with, and frankly should be more of a listener and proponent for what folks share with me versus critiquing how and who is participating. So I'm very sorry that I said that, and clearly I have some of my own work, which I will.
Thank you. I think one of the important things about calling out is that it interrupts the harm in a way that also, if it's in a public space, it educates everyone else that is also witnessing this. And I think it takes some courage and bravery to be able to call out, but I think that it's very impactful because it does interrupt sometimes, like in this case, where stereotypes are being perpetuated in a space.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Karimah. And I just want to invite folks to start, to reframe how you think about feedback or how you think about calling in versus calling out, because there is this piece of none of us have all the answers, none of us know everything, and in adulthood we frequently learn by experience. And so I know that I have both been called in and I've been called out multiple times, and that it's only made me better, and more importantly, it's helped to make sure that I cannot be as harmful when I'm connecting with different folks across different dimensions of diversity. Now that you've seen that great example of calling in and calling out, let's talk a little bit about accountability. I want to share two examples with you that I think really highlight what it looks like to both be called out publicly and handle it with a practice of accountability. Michael B. Jordan in June of 2021 launched a rum line, and, very excited, kind of doing a lot of promotion. And the name of the rum was based off of a festival that happened in Trinidad. And he was like, hey, this is in honor of like the culture and the experience and of this festival. Well, Nicki Minaj got on and kind of like, and I don't know if this was over Twitter or something else, but got involved in the conversation and was like, hey, that name is actually an event and a festival that celebrates, like, it's changed over the years, but it's really rooted in the colonization of Trinidad, of like when white colonizers came to the land. It's a French name, so that's actually not a nice name for the people of Trinidad, and folks don't appreciate that. So it doesn't feel like a celebration, it feels like a harm. Michael B. Jordan said, hey, we hear you. We're going to go back to the drawing board and we're going to find a new name. And I think it's still in progress of identifying what that new name is. And he was like, you know, I'm going to invest into the community there in Trinidad to like demonstrate that I know I caused harm and I don't want to anymore. And Halle Berry, I think it was the summer of 2020, you know, it was getting announced that she was going to play a trans character in a movie, and pushback came, and, you know, she was like, hey, I hear you. I'm stepping out of the role. You're right. Like, trans folks should tell trans stories. And clearly I have some educating to do for myself that I am going to do. And I've connected with these organizations, as well as I am going to make a donation to Black trans housing for folks who get kicked out of their homes for being who they are. And so she did that. So, I mean, that's accountability. Those are folks operating within integrity. It doesn't matter what their intent was. When they got the feedback, they understood the impact. And so they did something different. And I highlight that as well to be that, like, these are famous folks who have a ton of followers, a lot of press on them, and they were still able to hold themselves accountable. I want to share with you a little bit of a justice apology that I use. I try to say that I'm sorry, acknowledge the harm that I've caused, thank the person for their labor in providing me with that feedback, and name how my behavior will change. And then invite or name how I will be held accountable. The reason I do something like this is because in the moment, if I'm feeling like, feedback's hard, I feel embarrassed, I feel ashamed, I feel guilty, I feel sad that I caused this harm, that's human. That's a human thing. Those things are going to show up. But what I really want to make sure that I do is not center myself in that experience, because it's not about my intentions. It's about the impact that occurred. Anything you want to add on that, Karimah?
You know, I just love these examples because, like you said, these were very, very public circumstances, and both of these folks found a way to acknowledge the harm and apologize and really, really be truly accountable. So when we bring it back to us interacting, you, Casey, or me, you know, interacting on a day-to-day basis, it does make it a little bit more easier in a sense to interact with just on a one-on-one basis with an individual to be accountable in that way. So thank you for that.
Yes, absolutely. I think, again, accountability is another word that I think we need to reframe as well. I think the idea of being accountable to me is a part of being in integrity. And I want to be in integrity with myself, with my values, with my relationships, with my community. And so recognizing that accountability is also not a bad thing either, just like feedback. So I want to thank folks for watching this training, and hopefully you're able to continue taking and watching the trainings that are offered in the Learning Library. Again, my name is Casey Tonnelly of Beyond Thinking, and Karimah, I'm going to hand it off to you to close us out.
I just want to say thanks for everyone for taking this time to learn with us, and we look forward to the next session learning with us. And if you have any questions, you know where to find us.